Right. I saw another great video on Flow Wrestling of Ben Askren, Christian Piles talking about middle schoolers competing in the fall. And I thought I'd do a video breakdown of this. They have good points on both sides of this. So let me share my screen.
NCAA time. Let's go.
NCAA time, which is a glorious time of wrestling. Tournaments are gonna start popping up here. We got some Caleb's gonna start wrestling. This is gonna be exciting.
Ooh,
We got tournaments going here in Texas. I don't know about you wannabes in Wisconsin, but
we don't encourage any youth wrestling in the fall, actually, Christian. Being serious, PNL, we don't have a youth division in the fall either. We only have high school kids only, because all of us kind of feel the same way. And actually, I encourage my middle school kids to not start wrestling until December, because the ones who are older, I want them to continue into the spring. So I just think, like, hey man, they don't need a 10-month season at this time of their lives. So we'll wrestle like December to like June, which is about 7 months.
And pause it. Okay, so it's a good point. What Ben Askren is drawing, what his principles here. So there's the content, and then there's the principles behind the content. The principles you could always hold. The content could potentially be different depending on the situation, right? So what Ben's saying here is that kids wrestle a lot, and he's right. We see it. I always say that if you're a serious wrestler by the age of 9, you should be doing mindset training. No question about it. Maybe not the weekly program, but definitely twice a month, if at least once a month. And when I say serious wrestler, I mean 12 months out of the year, you're going to practices, not necessarily competing, but you're at least going to practices 12 months out of the year, multiple times a week, most weeks. That's a serious wrestler in my mind. And they're going to need to work on their mindset by the time they're 9 years old, because it's a lot of wrestling that they're doing. Now, once they're 12, they should definitely be doing mindset training and likely the weekly program. Some of our best wrestlers started the weekly mindset training program when they were 12 years old, but at least twice a month. Once you're in high school, it's basically mandatory weekly mindset training. So that's because exactly what Ben's talking about here. Kids wrestle a lot. So the topic isn't so much wrestling a lot, it's competing a lot. That's really the topic. Kids compete a lot, and competition is taxing, not only physically, but also mentally and emotionally. And there's other factors to consider too. When you're competing and you're making weight, you shouldn't be cutting a lot of weight, if any, especially in some of these off-season tournaments. But alas, a lot of kids are cutting weight. What happens is the focus starts to become on making weight, winning, and not as much on the development aspect and getting better. And what happens is, what you'll see is kids will start, middle school, that's when a lot of kids start strength training. So they're starting to get big. They're going to start, they're on the cusp of their muscles starting to develop. Some kids who are early bloomers, who are likely to have a lot of success in high school, a lot of these early bloomers, just because of puberty kicking in early, it's starting to kick in. They're starting to get big. They're starting to become a man in middle school. A lot of these boys and these girls becoming women. So you're growing, you're shrinking your body down, and there's a lot of competition. And we know middle school is highly competitive. It starts getting highly competitive in middle school. Not saying it's not competitive before, but middle school is definitely ramping up. So what Ben's saying is he wants to do he likes his people to do December to June. So a 7-month season. And there's value in that. There's definitely value in that. Now, how you structure it, what 7 months you do, that you could change it you could make it different at different times in the year. And you're gonna see Christian's gonna talk about that. So let's go back to the shared screen.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
we're gonna wrestle this weekend now.
I don't think Christian was quite ready for that. Ben's saying they don't wrestle in the fall because it's like there's just so much wrestling going on in the fall, and a lot of the top tournaments are in the fall. So he was just kind of caught off guard there. He's like, yeah, well, we're going to wrestle.
Okay, what you say?
And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Just just a difference of opinion here, but I think the philosophies are similar. Listen as we go. The philosophy, the principle behind it are similar.
Wait, we don't get that. Honestly, it's more about like, all right, are we home this weekend? Can we do it? Am I going to be traveling? Because honestly, November, December, it's harder for me to get him to tournaments because I'm traveling so much more. So
And pause it. So that is a very important point. So remember, a lot of times in our society, it's the parents work around the kid's schedule. And that's real. And of course, there's always going to be sacrifices for kids. We're not saying that. And then there's always an element of, to some extent, working around the kid's schedule. But at the end of the day, the kid ultimately needs to work around the parent's schedule, especially if the parent, let's face, a lot of times it's the wrestling dad, and the wrestling dad works, and his schedule permits certain things. Now, I definitely see where Christian's coming from here, because my kids are much younger. My 4-year-old, my 3-year-old, but I have to take them to different wrestling clubs based on what time of day that I'm free. I take them to what practices, and what are they doing right now? They're doing rolls. They're doing very, very basic technique, barely even technique in a lot of situations. But I could only take them when I could take them. And Christian works in wrestling, so he's constantly traveling around to tournaments and to events. I'm constantly traveling around to tournaments and events and speaking engagements too, with wrestling mindset. So it's like I could project myself, 10 years into the future, even 7 years into the future, and say, all things being equal, yeah, the kids are going to kind of have to work around my schedule. And Ben's principles are there. Where Ben's principles and philosophies are, kids compete a lot, right? Not having competition all the time. Well, what Christian's saying is that his schedule naturally builds in some natural breaks for his kid. So you see the principles and the philosophies are similar. Maybe how it's expressed is a little bit different based on life circumstances. So that makes sense. And parents, ultimately, you can't feel guilty about that. That's an important lesson for your kid. I mean, we're in a highly kid dominant society. Like, we do everything for our children, and it's good, but our kids do need to know that ultimately, faith comes first, family comes first, or family comes second, where the family needs to, they got to make ends meet. They got to do it. Wrestling does not exist in a vacuum, and that's a good lesson. That gives a kid a broader perspective. When a kid sees that the sun rises and sets entirely around wrestling, not good, because what happens is the kid sees that they have to do well. There's no other choice. All of life is about wrestling, and that hurts perspective. It makes them more nervous, and it makes them more likely a lot of times to choke in bigger competitions. Now, I'm not saying there's not exceptions to this rule, but you have to also weigh the cost-benefit ratio. So even if your kid is highly successful, and they come out of wrestling thinking, we're talking about they finish their wrestling career, and all they think is all life is about is wrestling. How good is that? And even some of the best, and then you start, it's not good. And then you look at some of the best wrestlers of all time. You look at some of our best American wrestlers. Cael Sanderson never says wrestling is all that life's about. He says it's a game. It's probably his favorite game, but it's just a game. John Smith is a strong Catholic faith. Wrestling is bigger. Life is bigger than just wrestling. Dan Gable acknowledged many times that wrestling, it's W's and L's, wins and losses, and not life, L's and D's, life and death. So he recognizes there's the bigger picture. All the great coaches. I mean, you don't have to just look anywhere. Coaches are talking about building better people. So that's why it's not good to make it where everything is structured entirely around the kid. Sometimes you have to miss wrestling. And the good thing about that is that's a natural break. Life is throwing a break your way. The Almighty is inserting a break into yours and your kid's schedule. That's a good thing. Adaptability, perspective, a lot is gained there. So don't feel bad if the kid has to work around your schedule. That's a topic that doesn't normally get brought up a lot, but it is important. The kid could sometimes miss practice because there's a family obligation. It's not good to keep your kid from family obligations all the time because, there's a tournament, there's a practice. now I get it. There's always going to be an element of that. There are going to be times where a kid has to give up this and that, like little things. But if there's some family get-togethers and most, I mean, almost all holidays, kids shouldn't be missing that stuff. I mean, these are the important things. They got to be a kid. They need to see that life is bigger than wrestling, and that the world is bigger than them. So important to see. And I'm not saying Ben is denying any of that, but I'm bringing up, these points just based on how Christian was framing this. I think Ben and Christian's philosophies here, their principles are aligned. Let's go back to the tape.
I bet Katie's a better corner person than you, though.
Now, a lot of
She
trash
gets on
talking.
business.
Honestly, it's funny you mentioned that because she'd sat and she'd like an illegal headlock.
At least know the rules.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Uh,
very
Oh,
exciting.
you guys still do those?
But Caleb,
Just a lot of trash talking at the end. Okay, so real good points there. Wanted to bring that to you. Have a great day. Mindset makes the difference.